In the first chapter of Romans, Paul accused humanity of habitual apostasy and spiritual depravity. In Romans 1, verse 18, he began his argument by saying, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived, ever since the creation of the world, in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse." Paul was a very educated man. He was a highly trained biblical scholar, and he was familiar with the writings of Gentile philosophers and poets. He knew about the apostasy of mankind from the stories of the fall of Adam and Eve, the flood, and the Tower of Babel in Genesis. He also undoubtedly knew that ancient Greek philosophers such as Aristotle had observed the order and design in nature and had correctly deduced that there must be a prime mover, an uncaused cause who created and ruled the universe. Although people generally believe that God exists, they have consistently refused to seek him or obey him. Romans 1 verse 21 says, "For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man, and birds and animals and creeping things." As a direct result of turning away from God, humanity has fallen into darkness and spiritual depravity. Romans 1 verse 28 says, "And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them." There are two important points in this passage. First, the Torah implicitly or explicitly condemned all these behaviors. For example, the Torah demanded the death penalty for blasphemy, cursing one's parents, murder, adultery, and perjury. It also prohibited covetousness, hating one's neighbor, gossip, slander, carelessly ignoring God's law, swearing falsely, and breaking an oath. Second, Paul's case against the Gentiles rests on the fact that they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die. Paul wasn't saying that the Gentiles knew the Torah, but that they had law codes like the Torah, which they broke anyway. God created humanity with a conscience, so people can deduce many of God's commandments on their own. God also gave humanity basic laws long before the time of Moses. For example, in Genesis 9, verses 5 and 6, God told Noah to execute murderers. Although humanity turned away from God after the flood, many ancient cultures preserved some of these early laws. For example, scholars have long discussed the similarities and differences between the law of Moses and the Code of Hammurabi, a cuneiform text inscribed on a Babylonian monument from the 18th century BC that discusses judgments concerning assault, murder, incest, marriage, adultery, divorce, stealing, kidnapping, slaves, perjury, trade, wages, loans, and debts. So even though the Gentiles didn't have the Torah, they knew the difference between right and wrong, and they had law codes like the Torah. In Romans 2, verse 14, Paul wrote, "For when Gentiles, who do not have the law, by nature do what the law requires, they are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them on that day when, according to my gospel, God judges the secrets of men by Christ Jesus." Paul's entire argument rests on the fact that the Mosaic law contained God's righteous decree against wickedness, and that the Gentiles agreed with this moral standard. His argument assumes that the Torah is God's basic definition of right and wrong, and that it applies to all humanity. Jesus expected his disciples to teach and keep the law of Moses, and the apostles affirmed the authority of the Torah throughout the New Testament. Therefore, the Mosaic law is still relevant as a guide for proper Christian living.